though. Okay, so now we know the different estimation methods. We want to concentrate on what is front of mind for the editors, right? And the editors are very concerned about endogeneity. They're very concerned about natural experiments, and they're very concerned about spurious regression. Yeah. So we've got to focus on that. Yeah? So the approach is, what's the state of the art for this methodology? What are the editors really looking for? And that's very important for you when you're conducting your research. What's a great exemplar to apply, right? And for the natural experiment, we're going to show you the Hyder-Lindquist paper. Yeah. And then finally, where to from here, right? So that's the approach. What's the state of the art? What are the editors looking for? What can you go to as a great exemplar of what we're talking about? And where do we go from here? Okay, so start off with endogeneity. So very interesting. We touched on this last webinar when we talked about experiments. And I said, well, you can do experiments in the lab, or then there's such a thing called natural experiments. So those two men on the right, Angrist and Ibens, they got the Nobel Prize for coming up with the methodology behind natural experiments. Yeah? They're all very handsome, as you can see. I think one of these guys is at Stanford, Ibens, and the other guy, Angst, is at Berkeley, so just 60 miles from each other. So Guido Imbens, and someone posted about this on the Facebook page, on your Knowledge Bridge Facebook page. He is recorded after he won the Nobel Prize, explaining his methodology to his children. He had three children, so he's actually explaining the methodology. So it's very interesting and well worth for you watching. So do click on this YouTube video and see the Nobel Prize winner explaining to his children. So to cut a long story short, here are two examples that he gave to his children, right, about natural experiments. So the first example, it does more time at school, but is spending longer at school. Yeah, so a longer time period. Does that lead to higher income? Yeah? So if you go to school more, does it lead to higher income? And he was able to find a natural experiment. Yeah, whereas the compulsory school going used to be October 1, but then was changed to September 30th. So it meant that if you were caught in that divide, you ended up having more school. You've got like an extra year. And then when they looked at it, nothing changed. The education was the same, just that the person spent more time. And it turns out, right, when you use this natural experiment, that on average, more time at school led to higher income. Yeah? So it was a very interesting result. Right? More time at school led to higher income. The second example was, people often debate about, what if there was a safety net income that everyone got? Everyone got a guaranteed income, regardless of whether they worked or not. So the question is, does having a guaranteed income affect whether you continue working or not? Right? So if the government gave you a guaranteed income, would that affect whether you work or not? So very hard to do, with an experiment, right? Because you'd have to, it would cost the government a lot of money to do that sort of thing. Just for experimental purposes, it'd be hard to set up. So what they found was a natural experiment in Massachusetts, which is the state where Boston is, the very famous city of Boston in Massachusetts. They have a lottery, and if you win the lottery, the prize is a big amount of money, but it's actually paid not as a lump sum. It's paid out at $25,000 a year for 20 years. Yeah? So what they're able to do, this lottery that has a lot of winners, say it's drawn every week, there's a lot of winners of this lottery, and they were prepared able to compare their behaviour, with whether they won it versus beforehand, and it turned out that it didn't affect their willingness to work. Right, that most of the winners, just kept working. They didn't leave their job. Right, and so that answered a very important, policy question. Does having a safety net income, would that mean people would slack off and not work? Well, it seemed like the people on the lottery, they didn't slack off. They were very happy to get 25 a year for 20 years, but they just kept working. They didn't slack off. Just checking the chat again. All good. So that was what the prize is for. So that's a very good, for a father, the Nobel Prizeman, that's trying to explain to his children, what a natural experiment was. That was very good. And so that's two very good examples. So we'll finish with a very tight example from the Hyder and Lindquist paper, which that you should study. Right, that gives you a really good idea of how to do natural experiments. So, what exactly is endogeneity? Well, it is the classic problem, right, that editors now are very concerned about. They don't just want you to go out and do a regression with Y's and X's. They want you to come up with something clever, like those two examples, right, where you can sift through using this exogenous event. If you can't come up with that, then they want to see you use the best econometrics to overcome the problem. So what is the problem? So I noticed that in New York, there's a lot of crime and there's a lot of police officers. But in Canberra, the capital of Australia, there's not much crime and there's not many police officers. So, are the police officers causing the crime? Or because there's crime, you need more police officers, right? So a simple regression is not going to tell you cause and effect. It will tell you they're related, but it won't give you cause and effect. Ownership of companies, more diffuse ownership where it's spread across a whole lot of people might affect performance. However, on the other hand, firms with really good performance might attract a wide cross-section of ownership. What's driving what? Banks with really good capital reserves might have good performance, but really good performing banks might have the ability to have a stronger capital reserve. So what's driving what? So this is the problem of causation. And athletes like runners and swimmers, or all athletes, might develop lactic acid as their performance deteriorates. On the other hand, as their performance is deteriorating and their muscles are failing, the body might generate lactic acid to aid the muscles in their performance. Right? And actually, people thought that they did notice that there was a lactic acid buildup in athletes, and they were trying to stop the buildup of lactic acid. But when they were able to study it at a molecular level, they found out that actually the lactic acid was a good thing. It was actually helping the athlete to get the most out of the muscles. Right? So this studying something at the molecular level is sort of what we do with a natural experiment. Sort of what we do with a natural experiment. So in all cases, just doing a regression is going to compound these effects, right? It's got to, you're not going to be sure what's the cause and what's the effect. What's the cause, what's the effect? So that's the problem of endogeneity. And this is what the editors are so concerned about. So what I want to do, first of all, is show you the state-of-the-art econometrics, statistical approaches to dealing with it, and then even better solution, which is a natural experiment. Okay, so that's what we're going to focus on. So it is very similar to the errors in a variable problem. So since you're familiar with that, we'll review that, but then we're going to draw on the parts that also apply to endogeneity.